Hey, Ryan Deiss again, CEO of Digital Marketer, and I want to talk about another truly critical document that we use here at DM to, anytime we're going to write copy or produce a new offer, we bust out a value journey canvas. Because what we're doing with the value journey canvas, just like what we talked about with the before and after grid, we're talking about how do we transform our customers, even before they're customers, from strangers into friends, into buyers, into raving fans, right? So now we're thinking about it from a before and after, from the context of marketing, from the context of the business. And we're able to leverage this tool to visualize it. And as you're about to see, copy. We leverage sales copy at each and every stage of the value journey. But before I get to the canvas itself, the tool itself, let's talk about sequence. Because I truly believe that sequence is one of the most underrated aspects of copywriting. It's one of the most underrated aspects of salesmanship. You can have the most amazing sales letter. You can craft the most beautiful piece of copy in the world, but if you deliver it too soon or if you deliver it too late, right? If it's at the wrong point in the sequence, it's not going to work. And yet, if you have pretty decent copy that's delivered at just the right moment in the relationship, it can have amazingly positive effects. So what do I mean by that? Well, let's think about it in terms of dating and relationships, right? You may have seen this meme around, this poor girl here who I'm sure was just being nice, but now this is a meme, right? So for our first date, I was thinking we could figure out the names of our children, right? This is what a lot of marketers are doing. Hi, nice to meet you, let's get married. And you may even be given a copy assignment where it's like, for the homepage of our website, I want to sell a $10,000 service. Right from the get-go, you're going to fail, right? You have been set up for failure because that's not the right sequence, okay? That is not the right sequence. If you're going to deliver that level of offer, if you're going to make that kind of offer, it needs to be at the right time, right moment, right proportion, and we're going to talk about how to figure out exactly how that's done. But at the same time, you don't want to default to this route. This is what a lot of other kind of modern marketers who are terrified of selling and who don't ever want to make an offer, they're like, oh no, it's simple. Just give lots of value. Just give value and eventually they'll come and buy. No, that's not how people work. That's how you get friend zoned, right? That's how you as a brand wind up getting put in the friend zone. Now, hopefully I don't have to convince you to not be this. After all, we're talking about copywriting. We're talking about salesmanship, right? But what we do need to figure out is what's that kind of nice middle, right? So here's how to not be that guy or frankly, that girl. The way that we do it is we understand that there are stages of intimacy. Now this is another kind of topic worth Googling. I'll kind of explain it to you here, but if you want to dive a little bit deeper, I do recommend that you Google 12 stages of intimacy, Desmond Morris. Desmond Morris is actually a zoologist, and so he's studying animals and animal behavior. And some years ago, he said, you know what, I want to study the human animal. And specifically, I want to discover, how does intimacy happen? How do intimate relationships, how does intimate behavior occur? And I think it's pretty fascinating. We never thought about this because it's kind of been around since Adam and Eve, right? This notion of people getting together and becoming intimate. It's like breathing, right? It's the reason that we exist today. But the study of it, because it's so commonplace, we never thought to study, but it's pretty fascinating. I mean, if you're in a committed, romantic, intimate relationship right now, it's kind of hard to imagine that at one moment in time, you had no idea who each other were. There was a moment in time where had you passed on the street, you probably wouldn't have even noticed one another, right? And yet now you share your most intimate moments together. How does that happen? Well, that was what Desmond Morris wanted to study. Well, so how does this apply to us? Well, I think it's similarly, although not to the same degree, but it's similarly amazing that there are people out there who don't yet know that you exist. They don't know that your product exists. They don't know that your brand exists. They don't know that you could take them from this less desirable before state to this more desirable after state. They don't know any of this stuff, and yet there can be a moment where they recognize you, they acknowledge you, they become to get engaged with you, and now they give you some of their time and some of their money, and before long they could become a raving fan telling everybody about you. I mean, think about an Apple fan, right? There are people who will camp out overnight to give that company money. How does that happen, right? How does that happen? Well, I believe that Desmond Morris laid that out, and what he essentially found is that there are 12 stages of human intimacy. 12 stages, and it starts, eye to body. So you see somebody, you recognize them, right? Eye to body. Then it's eye to eye. You make eye contact. Then you walk over to them and it's, hand to hand. Maybe it's, hand to shoulder, and then maybe it's body to body, and it eventually progresses. Again, it's worth Googling to see the full progression. We all, I think, know as adults where it ends up, but the progression is really interesting. And I found that to be a very fascinating aspect of this study, was just the acknowledgement of the 12 stages of intimacy. But admittedly, when you read them, when you see them, you're going to say, yeah, this is kind of obvious, right? It makes sense that I'm probably going to shake someone's hand before I'm going to touch their face. Right? It'd be really weird if somebody walked up to you for the first time and they just touched your face. Maybe you've got a great aunt that wants to pinch your cheeks and it drives you crazy, right? But if a total stranger did that, that would be utterly insane, right? And when you realize that, wow, that's stage 8 or 9, it's way down the line, it begins to make sense. So it's very logical. So the 12 stages were helpful, but what I thought was the most helpful part of his work wasn't the kind of recognition of these 12 stages. It was this. It was that while you can skip one stage and get away with it, if you skip more than 2, it's assault. Right? If you walk up to somebody who's a total stranger and you touch their face, they're going to feel assaulted. And obviously, when we think about, not to make light of a serious subject, but when you think about sexual assault, that's what we're talking about. It's somebody skipping steps. It's somebody going too soon. I could walk up to my wife, if we're at home in the kitchen or something like that, and it's just us, and give her a smack on the booty, and that would be fine, right? Because we've been married for a long time. I mean, maybe if I'm in the doghouse, she wouldn't think it was as funny, but in general, that's fine, right? We're beyond that stage. But if I were to do that, certainly wouldn't do it now. I'd be killed by multiple people. But if I were to do that even when I was single to somebody I just met, I would probably get slapped, right? Rightfully so. So it's not about the action. It's about the sequence, okay? It's not about the action. It's about the sequence. It's about the sequence of when you deliver your copy. And that's where you've got to know when you're writing copy, where in this relationship is this going to be used? Is this copy going to appear on a landing page where somebody's going to be seeing it for the very first time? It's going to be their very first interaction. Well, you're going to write different types of copy for that. Or is this going to be sent out to superfans, people who have bought a whole bunch of other things and now are making that's a completely different type of copy. What you can ask for there, the type of languaging that you can use, the length of the copy, all of this changes because of the sequence. Okay, so Desmond Morris gave us 12 stages of human intimacy. What we found at Digital Marketer when we looked at it is we could ultimately reduce it down to 8. But the big takeaway and the big thing that I want you to remember before we get to the actual stages is this. B2B, B2C, there is no distinction, there is no difference. It is always H to H. All right, what Desmond Morris said when he was talking about intimate behavior in the 12 stages, which again, you're about to see how it's 8 stages. It still is about humans. Your business, your brand, whether you own it or whether you're writing on behalf of another brand, there are people behind that, right? That's a company filled with humans. And whether that company is selling to another company, even there on the buying end, that's more humans. We're always talking about human beings who have a very specific need. And if you will remember that you're not a business selling to another business, or you're not a business selling to a vast array of humanity. No, you're a human selling to another human. Then this starts to make a lot more sense because you begin to realize that what we're talking about here when we're talking about selling and copywriting, what we're really talking about is we're talking about human relationships, human engagement, human involvement, right? It is a relationship and there is a level of intimacy. So I want you to write this down. The role of marketing, the role of copywriting, okay? The role of copywriting is to move prospects and customers seamlessly and subtly through each phase of the value journey. That's ultimately what you're doing. When you're crafting copy, you're not trying to make a sale, right? You're trying to move them from one stage of the value journey to the next stage. That's what you're trying to do. Now, depending on the stage, the sale may be the desired end result, but it may be an opt-in. It may just be read and consume. We're going to talk about all those in a little bit, but if you keep this in mind, it's going to inform, okay, what's your goal supposed to be in this, right? It's always moving them over to the next level. So this is the value journey canvas. This is the actual tool that we use here at Digital Marketer, the one that I recommend that you fill out, or that you have if you're doing client work, or if you're working internally doing copy, or if it's your brand, fill this out. This is the document that describes how a prospect who's in this less desirable before state moves throughout a company through all 8 stages to the more desirable after state. Okay? The 8 stages, by the way, are awareness, engagement, subscribe, convert, excite, ascend, advocate, and promote. Okay? Those are the 8 stages that are in the value journey. So it all begins with awareness, right? Awareness is when someone actually becomes aware of your brand, of your product. This is essentially what happens in advertising. So if you're being asked to write copy for a Facebook ad or for a Google ad or email copy that's designed to go out to generate a click, then you're writing to generate awareness. So if you're crafting a Facebook ad, for example, your goal should not be to make the sale. Your goal should be to generate awareness and to get the click, okay? Now, when we think about the second stage, which is engagement, at the engage stage, this is when a glance becomes a stare, okay? This is when a glance becomes a stare. Now we're beginning to engage a little bit more. So this could be a prospect reading a blog post. It could be engaging in social media. It could be watching a video, right? If you have a really powerful, compelling video, a lot of what I think about in the engagement stage, think about all the, Billy Mays type videos. If you don't know who Billy Mays is, you got to Google Billy Mays. I mean, like one of the best kind of short form infomercial pitchmen and copywriters of all time. When you watched a Billy Mays infomercial, short form infomercial, you were engaged. He was demonstrating, oh, look at this. He's running over his hand in a car and, swimming with sharks and doing all this crazy stuff that was engaging, right? Good copy, even if it's selling something, can still be engaging, but you got to figure out, is that what I'm trying to do? Am I trying to get a glance or am I trying to get a stare? If it's just an ad, if it's an ad in, Facebook or Google, you're trying to get a glance and then you're trying to get a click. If you're sending them over to the website, right? What's on that landing page that's going to cause them to engage? Right? That's what you're trying to get them to do. You're not trying to get them to necessarily do anything but engage, to linger there just a little bit longer. The third stage, subscribe. This is when somebody actually opts in. At the subscribe stage, this is when the business, the brand actually has the ability to follow up because the prospect has given them their name and contact information and permission to follow up. Okay, and permission to follow up. So at this stage as a copywriter, this is when you're writing landing page copy. Right? Headlines, bullet points, right? What are you going to say to where a prospect says, yeah, you know what? I'm happy to give a little bit of my privacy away to this brand. I'm happy to do it because I believe that what is being offered on this landing page is valuable enough that that's a fair transaction. Okay? So when we're writing copy for landing page, we're talking about the subscribe stage. Now, when you're trying to get just a name and email address from somebody, you're probably not writing a book. Okay, so again, sequence, it matters. Sequence informs proportion. Now we get to the convert stage, right? It's at this stage when the relationship changes a little bit. It's at this stage when there's a conversion of the relationship. It's at this stage when the prospect becomes more of a customer. And they do this by making a commitment. Okay, it's at this stage when we're looking for a little commitment, either a commitment of a little bit of time or a commitment of a little bit of money. So if you're writing a sales letter for an entry point offer or a tripwire or some type of self-liquidating offer, some type of loss leader, right? This is when we're producing our front end offer, right? If you're writing front end copy to try to get somebody to make a low dollar purchase, that's happening here at the convert stage. Similarly, if you're trying to get somebody to sign up for a demo, right? A demo, they're giving up some of their time. Right? That's a much heavier lift than just getting them to opt in for a special report, for a lead magnet, because there's not that immediate, there's not that immediate sense of value that's going to come, right? They're registering knowing that they're going to get on a call or on a webinar with a salesperson, right? That's why that rises to the level of a convert. Also, what you may be doing, maybe you're asked to write copy for a webinar registration page. The webinar registration page is the subscribe. But if they don't actually show up for the webinar, if they don't actually attend the webinar, then they haven't given any time. If they haven't given any of their time, they're not truly a convert. So understanding these stages, you as a copywriter would hopefully say, it's not enough that I would just write the landing page copy for the webinar, the webinar registration copy to get people to sign up. If I want to help them progress, I also need all the follow-up copy to make sure they attend. Because if they don't attend, they stop here, they're not transitioning, and you haven't done your whole job. So do you see how the value journey begins to inform all the different pieces of copy that are going to need to be written? It can also inform when something doesn't happen quite like you would want, where do you need to zero in and optimize? Okay? So that's that convert stage, getting them to make a small purchase, getting them to make a small commitment of time. This is actually one of the most difficult stages to write for. This is why if you talk to any of the copywriting greats, they'll tell you one of the most difficult things in the world to produce is a front-end package. Producing that front-end piece of copy that's going to get people to not just register, but to show up, right? To not just opt in, but to make a small purchase, to get out their wallet. You learn to master that stage right there, and you're going to become a very, very, very successful copywriter and a very valuable copywriter indeed. But it doesn't just stop with the convert stage, right? This is like the first date. Getting somebody to go out with you once, that's tricky, right? But if you do a good job, if you don't totally mess up the day, getting a second date is much easier. It's why writing back-end copy is easier than writing front-end copy, even though a back-end product may be more expensive, right? Because getting that first date is the toughest. But we can't forget about not being a complete weirdo during that first date. They have to get excited. This is a big mistake that I see copywriters make, right? Big mistake that I see copywriters make. They say, okay, I wrote the sales letter. I wrote the sales copy. The demo happened. They bought the thing that we wanted them to buy. But were they excited about the purchase? I can tell you if they're not excited, if they don't get value from that initial transaction, if they didn't feel like that first date was really a lot of fun, there won't be a second date. They will not ascend, okay? Consumption is not required for ascension. They don't have to consume every aspect of the product. They don't have to get all value from, maybe it's a demo that's happening right here. They don't have to completely be transformed like what we talk about from a transformation from before and after state. They don't have to be completely transformed, but something has to happen that causes them to be excited about the fact that they did business with you, okay? There has to be something here. And if you don't bake this in as a copywriter, people are going to stop here. They're not going to progress to the next stage. So what's happening at the convert stage that can get them really excited? I'll give you an example that may seem unfamiliar. A couple years ago, I bought a Tesla, okay? It's the Tesla that has the ludicrous speed, right? And so going through, I obviously became aware of Tesla through their advertising and people talking about them. And, I went to their website and I became engaged on the site and kind of planning out, the car and figuring out all the specs. And then I decided to go in to the dealership. And they while I was there, they asked me for my contact information. And I gave it to them. And then I actually scheduled a test drive. Right? So now I'm in the car driving around. But when I got in the car, I was kind of a wuss about it. Right? I was a little bit like, because it's a test drive. It's scary. And you're driving somebody else's car and it's an expensive car and you got a stranger sitting next to you in the passenger seat. So I'm driving around. I'm like, yeah, this is cool. And I'm ready to go back to the dealership. And I'd pretty much made up my mind that I was going to get it, but I wasn't totally sure. It's expensive and I didn't know if the chargers were all over the place and how much was that going to be to put that in my house. But there's still a lot of questions I had that were unanswered, but I was pretty sure I was going to buy it. So I'm like, okay, yeah, this is cool. Let's go back to the dealership. Now, fortunately, Tesla has some dang good copywriters on staff who have really trained their salespeople because he would not let me just drive back to the dealership. He was like, we're not done yet. I want you to pull over to this back road, which is a little bit sketchy now that I say it out loud again. But he's like, no, I want you to pull over to this back road. We need to do a launch. Have you ever done a launch in a Tesla before? No, what's that? You're going to find out. So we go over to this back road, right? And he looks around and he's like, okay, cool. There's no other cars around. What I want you to do is I want you to, when you're ready, take your foot off the brake and just floor it. I want you just to floor it. Just let this thing loose, right? Let it go. And so I'm like, oh, okay, I can probably do that. And I kind of did it and I was like, pushed down a little bit. And I'm like, whoa. And he's like, nope, stop. You did it wrong, right? You did it wrong. Now, this is all copy. Okay, don't assume that because these words are not in a letter or on a web page that this is not sales copy. This is absolutely sales copy, and I will guarantee you that it is written down somewhere and it is a part of Tesla's training program. No, stop. You did not do it right. Turn back around. We're going to try again. This time, listen for the copy. This time, I want you to take your foot off the brake, and I want you to hover over the accelerator about 3 inches, and then I want you to squash all the way down in that accelerator like you're squashing the most disgusting bug you've ever seen in your life. That's copy, okay? They're articulating what I want you to do. Bam, right? That's what I want you to do, and they're doing it in a meaningful way. Okay, I got it. Instantly, I hit it. Boom, and I saw what 0 to 60 in 2.8 seconds or whatever it is felt like. At that moment, I was excited. At that moment, I was sold. I no longer cared how many charging stations there were. I no longer cared how much it was going to cost to put a thing. I was excited and therefore I was sold. But if I had not experienced that level of excitement, if that had not been baked into the buying process, I probably still would have bought it, but I don't know if I would have bought it then. I don't know if I would have bought it from that person. But because it was baked in, the decision was made. I went back and I bought it right then and there on the spot. Okay? So don't assume that as a copywriter that just because the sale is made, that the sale is made. If they're not excited, the sale won't stick. And if they're not excited, they certainly won't ascend. Okay? So when we think about ascension, now we're getting into the back end. Okay, an initial purchase has been made. How do we make sure that they buy more? This is writing back end copy. This is a little bit easier, right? Because at this point, we're writing the back end copy. At this point, we had a first date. Everybody had fun. It's pretty easy to say, let's go have dinner, right? That's pretty easy. And I think that this is an important thing to keep in mind because a lot of copywriters will invest an enormous amount of energy producing really long, drawn-out copy. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with long copy. There's absolutely a place for it. But they'll spend so much time crafting this copy that's trying to make a sale. And the reason that it's so hard is because they're trying to take someone from awareness to ascension. Remember what I said before about kind of the rule that Desmond Morris had? You can skip one step, but you can't skip two. Copywriters all the time are trying to go from awareness to ascension. They're skipping 1, 2, 3, 4 steps and wondering, why is it so hard? Why aren't more people buying? Why is this job so difficult? It's difficult because you're trying to propose marriage on a first date. You're doing the copywriting equivalent of proposing marriage on a first date. That's why it's difficult. That's why it's hard. As a copywriter, if you understand the importance of sequence and you understand that this is a relationship that oftentimes needs to be broken up into different steps, and if you can explain this to your client or to your boss, or if it's you writing copy for your own brand, hopefully you just get this, then everything becomes easier. Okay? So by the time we get to ascension, it should be easier. That was fun. Let's go on another date and another and another. That's why we picture this as a ladder of ascension. Now, the last 2 stages are advocacy and promotion. Advocacy are when a successful customer gives a testimonial. If you don't think that as a copywriter, it's not your job to get customers to give testimonials, you're fooling yourself. The journey is not finished yet. As a copywriter, you're writing for each and every stage in this journey. So when somebody buys, you should be crafting email follow-up copy to not just get them to consume so that they're excited and so that they want to ascend, but so that they want to come back and say, yeah, here's the results I got. This was great. Because as a copywriter, when you have these testimonials, you can leverage them in copy down in this area. So you want it, you don't just want to write copy to get it. You want to write copy to get it so you can use it. All right? And then similarly, when we get to the promoter stage, this is when we're shifting from passive advocacy to active promotion. This is when our customer has become our marketing partner. And this is not going to happen easily, but as a copywriter, copy is going to need to be written to convince them to become an affiliate or a value-added reseller. And then once you have them, they're going to need sales copy to deploy out in the marketplace. So as a copywriter, you are going to touch each and every stage of the value journey. Each and every stage of the value journey, you're going to touch it. And that's very, very, very exciting. It means that you're going to get to work with different teams. It's going to mean you're going to be pretty invaluable. Also, as a copywriter, though, you need to understand which stage you're writing for. If you don't understand which stage you're writing for, you could either be in the position where you're proposing marriage on a first date, or you could be in the position where here you are on date like 17, and they're saying, come on, let's get married, and you're the one trying to stay stuck in the friend zone. So this is the value journey canvas. Understand where you are. Understand that as a copywriter, that you do impact all of these, and make sure that before you ever sit down to write a piece of copy, that you go through this process and you understand the value journey and where it sits for your brand and for the product or the service that you're writing for. Once you've done this, once you understand the shift from the before to after state, now I think you can actually start writing some copy. So let's do that.